Hi everybody, it's 10:03. Sorry we're 3 minutes late. Couple of things. We always seem to have this technical issue where in the morning it takes a few minutes to go from poor to bad to okay to good on the stream status. So God bless the lovely Los Angeles interwebs. How are you all? So who we got online? We've got a wonderful collection of, hey Will, you always live, it's great. There's so many people here that leave incredible comments and are so wonderfully helpful. Anita, hello. Paul, hello. Brett, Eric, Dave Merkel, hello. Kinetic Artist, hello. Jean-Francois, hello. Wow, everybody, amazing. Yes, wild hair. You know what, to be honest, it's I woke up this morning and I looked in the mirror and went, wow, this is crazy. Hello, Jack in Glasgow. Hello in Portugal. Kronsgrave, how are you? Andrew. Hello in Denmark and Augsburg and Germany. Ukraine, South Florida. This is amazing. Dubai. Hello, AJ. Switzerland. You're very welcome, Carlo. I really appreciate it. Hello in India, Sweden. Oh, fantastic. Charleston, South Carolina. Wonderful. Ludwigshafen in Germany. Nebraska. South Africa. San Diego. Norfolk. The Norfolk Broads. Beautiful part of the world. Devon, another beautiful part of the world. California. Ireland. Hello, Dave in Ireland. We have lots of Irish people here at the moment making a record. Finland. Cologne. I am truly international. Well, it's interesting, you know, I'm English/British, living in Los Angeles. I have family all over the world. Very, very blessed. My extended family is truly international. I think that's quite English, isn't it? Let alone British, definitely English. We love to be expats. My aunt and uncle, as those of you who follow me know, are wonderful world travelers, and they have a place in Greece as well as Val d'Isere and England, and I have family obviously there and in England and over here, and yes, and of course I'm married to a Polish girl, so I have family in Poland as well, and of course I have Irish family, those of you that know me well. So yes, I do believe in internationalism. Is that a word? I believe in it very strongly. Italy, there you go, beautiful. Turkey, Birmingham, yeah, Greenland, Amsterdam. Oh, and I have Dutch family as well. I have a lot of family. My mother's family is Irish and Dutch. So isn't that what we say about cheekbones? You see, you get those from the Dutch. Yes, so fully international. I can't, you know, I've got an English accent, but I feel very worldly. And of course, I'm married to a Polish girl living in America, but my kids were born here, so they're American. So we have you know, it's truly international. So one thing I wanted to say, we have somebody new interning with us, Christian Vey. You all know Christian Vey? Christian Vey is coming intern with us. And you know he's in Donegal, beautiful part of the world, Montreal, sunny London, Cotswolds, Australia, a Mormon intern at your studio. No, he's not here anymore, but he's going to come back. He's a really, I know who you're talking about, and he's absolutely wonderful guy, and he is going to come back. Anyway, so what was I saying? Oh, so we have this new wonderful intern called Christian Vey. So those of you who ever watched Glenn Fricker's video will know Christian. He's that teenage shredding guy. Thank you, Brett. Yes, don't forget to hit like. So Christian's interning with us. So when he arrived yesterday morning, he actually came early, which I was very impressed with. And he said to me, would you like your guitars set up and restrung? So we just went and had all our guitars set up and restrung. I'm going to grab one. Why am I talking about it? Well, I'm talking about it because there's this new company, string company, and those of you that know me know I'm a huge Queen fan, but I'm also a massive Jeff Beck fan. I think every guitar player I like loves Jeff Beck, you know. Anyway, so why am I mentioning this? Well, there's a new string company called Sonotones. That's C-O-N-O-T and tones, you know, T-O-N-E-S. And they, one of the guys that's running it is called PK Pandy. He doesn't know I'm giving him a shout out, so PK. And he called me up and said, and gave us some of the very, very first sets of strings that they made. They're a Boston company, so those of you that are in America will like that. Anyway, to cut a long story short, they got a lot of the Boston people involved, which of course would be Joe Perry, and better still, Joe would agree with this, Jeff Beck's now using these strings. So I just restrung all of my guitars with them. And they make these strings, and they have a series called the Vintage, which is just comes out sounding perfect, like on this acoustic. And we've only got this little tiny little mic here on the Logitech. So it's just so even. Can you tell on that little Logitech mic? Recognize this song I did a couple of weeks ago? And these are 12s. Anyway, they're my new favorite strings. They're called Sonotones. We were actually looking for the packets, but Christian did a wonderful job. Christian Vey restrung all the guitars, set them all up, cleaned them up, made them look beautiful, which is what more can you ask from a new intern? And also a shredding guitar player who goes to Berkeley. Thank you, Paul. So they're wonderful. So it's a wonderful, wonderful set of strings. So Sonotones. So Christian cleaned up everything, made them all really great, and now we can't find any packets. Because I wanted this morning when I came in and I started playing all these guitars, I was so excited about how good they sounded. I wanted to hold up the string packet like this so you guys could see, guys and girls, could see what we're using. But he did a really good job of throwing away all the packets. But they're called Sonotones, S-O-N-O tones, and they're Jeff Beck's like new favorite string, Joe Perry's and everything, and I don't know, pretty excited. It's like Christmas when that kind of stuff happens and people give you strings to try out and they sound great. You know how easy it is? Anyway, so what are we doing? We're going to be talking about our favorite plugins. So, a couple of things. It's not just me talking about it. I want to have an amazing discussion with all of you online. Now, as ever, please subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. I'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button, and then you have to hit that bell, because apparently I've been told that if you don't hit the bell, you don't actually get notified that we have a video up. Hence, hitting subscribe is just only one thing. So please hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. I would really, really appreciate it. Hit the bell so you know that we've put a new video up and we're doing this one like this. And please like the video. I don't know if they do 12-string packs. Hello in Brazil. Anyway, oh, look, they found it. Sonotone.com. There it is. So, please check out the strings. Really, really big fan. What we'll do on Friday is we'll do giveaways of the strings on our Fact Friday. Why not? We'll throw it in. Because I just did this impromptu. So I'll text PK any minute now, and I will say, you know, I will ask PK to, if it's okay if we give away, like, I don't know, maybe like a dozen sets of strings or something like that. Maybe we do 3 sets of a dozen. Anyway, I've kind of thrown him under the bus now, haven't I? So that's what we'll do that on Friday. So if you're all your guitar players, come back on Friday and watch that video. All right, so favorite plugins. What I'm going to do, first of all, we're going to do that, and we're also going to do giveaways, and we're going to do giveaways of the new Richard Furch course. So a quick talk about that. Richard Furch is this amazing German engineer and mixer who's incredibly humble. And if you haven't already, check out yesterday's video. He's a wonderful guy. but most importantly, he's insanely talented. And we did a course together, and it's quite a simple song. However, even though it's quite simple, it's a 4-hour, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4-hour long video. 4 hours. Why is it 4 hours? Because he explains every single freaking detail. Every plugin, every choice he made, why he builds a template, how he builds it, everything. It is the best pop mixing course I've ever seen and I've ever done. And I was in the room while he was doing it. It was very, very exciting. I think being A, really smart, B, really talented, and frankly, C, German, he's so detail orientated. It's like everything you want. It's like, you know, watching that course is like driving a top of a range Mercedes, you know, because it's got all that German detail to it. Anyway, so we're going to give away 3 of those courses. So during the whole of the next hour or so, please stay online because we're going to do giveaways for everybody. Okay, let's talk plugins. I say we start with EQs. Now, I have several different favorite EQs. By the way, I'm sure Matt will put up for president. Thank you. Wasn't born in America, so I can't be president, you know. Matt, I'm sure now will put up a link to the Richard Furch course, so you can check it out while we're talking. It's definitely worth entering the competition, and frankly, it's worth buying it. It's probably the best pop course I've ever seen. Anyway, and you get all of the multi-tracks, not just stems and little sections of the song. You get the whole song. So it's definitely worth checking out. All right, so let's start with number 1, EQ plugins. Okay. I have 2 very specific needs when it comes to EQs, and they're quite different. Number 1, I want an EQ that affects the overall sound, that colors it. Specifically, I choose certain EQs for coloration. Now, within that coloration, there's 2 different aspects to it. There is something. How can I explain it? I'll explain it better. I'll pick you 2 favorite EQs, for instance. Now, you all know I love the Waves API EQs. If you ever watch any of the videos that we do, you'll see there's at least 1, 2, or 3 instances of me using the API EQs. And yes, the SSL is being mentioned there. We'll get to that in a second. But the reason why I go with those is because, and this is the same reason why if you saw the Mark Needham course or you watched the Mark Needham excerpts, is there's a familiarity. If you look over here, and this is important to know, and so that you can make your own choices on EQs. If you look over here, and you've watched any of my other videos, I know it's in the distance and probably very faint if you're on a mobile device, but there's a pair of 560s. Now, I have had those API 560s for 10 or 20 years. So I use them on kick and snare. I love how simple they are. I love that they're graphical. And this is true of all vintage emulations. It includes Waves vintage emulations and all the other manufacturers. I know UAD make them as well. And I know, of course, Stephen Slate makes them as well. These people that, you know, Stephen doesn't license them with the name, but we all know that when you open up a Slate plugin, what he's using, whether he's using an American style EQ like an API or a British style EQ like a Neve. And when you look at the Waves 560 or the UAD or the Slate versions of these EQs, what we like is the familiarity. The reason why guys like me and guys a lot older than me, like Chris and Mark and you know, all of these guys, the reason why they like that is because they grew up in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, where you'd walk into a studio and you'd see all of these familiar things. They were either in the console, and we'll get to SSL EQs. I know people are talking about that. We'll get to that in a minute. So it's not that they are better. There's no such thing. They're not better. They just have a sonic characteristic that we're used to. A lot of them have transformers, or in the case of a lot of API products, they have a little op amp, which is called a 2520, which is, and this, we're talking about the hardware for a second, and that's why people like them. They impart a sound. They add something to it. So when you're choosing, I personally love the 560, and I personally love the Waves version of the 560. It's something that I use every single day, because I know the sound of it, and I know when I reach for a boost or a cut, they are set in frequencies that complement each other. When you're dealing with old school EQs and compressors and all this kind of stuff, they have especially things like 1073s and 560s and 550s, you know, so we're talking Neve and API products. When we're talking about those, they have fixed EQ points. Somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago on one of our live talks about the AC/DC drum sound, and I said, well, if we talk about, like, Back in Black, I believe was mixed on a Neve but tracked on an MCI. However, a lot of that period, whether it's that album or not, a lot of those albums were mixed, tracked, and very often mixed on Neves before SSLs came in. Why is that an important thing to talk about? It's an important thing to talk about because they have fixed EQ points. If I look down here to a 1073, I see EQ points that are boostable and cuttable. So that becomes part of the signature of the sound. If you've got a 60 hertz boost on a kick drum, or a 70, like you have on this 1028, this BAE 1028 here, that's going to shape the sound. So I'm going to boost maybe 60 and cut 60 in a different instrument, boost 100 or 110 often, like 110, and then cut it in a different instrument. 220, 360, 440. These are all very familiar EQ points. So what starts to happen is you start, you know, because albums for the longest period of time were mixed on consoles with mainly fixed places, fixed points. That's why they ended up being, that's why you end up being used for that point, and that's why your ear gravitates towards it. So if you are going for a classic rock sound, use classic EQs. Use the plug-in version of a classic Neve or API EQ. I personally like the Waves 560, it's one of my favorites. This is now, secondly, talking about classic EQs, you know that I'm also a Mac DSP user. And you'll know that the filter bank, if you ever watch any of my videos or any of my mix breakdowns, you'll see a filter bank is an EQ I use a lot. Now, I believe it's going to sit between the two extremes of the kinds of EQs that I use. Why do I like it? Well, I like it because it has and I hate this term because we're in digital, but whatever, it has an analog sound. Mac DSP was one of the first companies to do analog modeling and bring that to it. So a lot of us, and I know a lot of mixers, like filter bank because you can treat it like a very fine EQ, i.e. you can sweep from 20 hertz to 20K across it, but when you boost and cut it, it sounds very sweet. What do I mean by that? It doesn't sound harsh on the high end. It seems to have an analog characteristic. So filter bank really, it's always been one of my favorite go-to plugins, because if I literally just want to brighten something globally, I can go to the filter bank and I can go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11K and just do a gentle slope, like a gentle slope, maybe centered about 7K, and it will just give a lot of brightness to it, and I can treat it just like I would a classic EQ, and I can just reach across. I've always loved filter bank for that. I like it when EQing low end as well, because it has a certain, and I hate this word, but I'm gonna use it, warmth. It seems you can go down and you can boost lows and low mids without, and it just seems to have the characteristic of an old school EQ. But of course it's fully sweepable. So it's not like an API or a Neve emulation, which has fixed bands. So that's my compromise EQ, positive compromise EQ, because I can treat it like a fine detailed EQ, but it still sounds, to me at least, and a lot of my friends, like a classic EQ. So once again, you've got on one side, you've got the API 560, wonderful EQ. You've got all the emulations that Waves and Slate and everybody else makes, UAD. Then you've got the filter bank, sitting firmly in the middle, which has the sound of those classic EQs for us, but it has a lot more flexibility because it's fully sweepable, and you can control the parametric, and you can get it pretty narrow, and you can really get in there and do stuff. Okay, now of course we have to talk about the second and most important kind of EQ, and that is the modern EQ. That is the EQ which doesn't impart that much of a sound whatsoever. Now, I grew up in digital using REQs, which is the Waves Renaissance EQs. I still find myself reaching for those all of the time for doing detail work. If I have to pull out 3 to 6 to 9 dB of a frequency and just get rid of it, then I'll reach for that all of the time. I use that. Now somebody's asking me there, good question, was asking about linear EQs. I'm not a big fan. I don't like the sort of ringing effect they do on it. I think it's a last resort to use a linear EQ, and to be honest, they tend to use an enormous amount of CPU. Enormous amount of CPU. Okay, we'll get into dynamic EQs maybe a little later. We're going to keep this really straightforward because we've got a lot to cover. Okay, so I personally like the REQs, the Renaissance, and it's familiarity. I reach for those. I know it's going to do the job. Now, as a lot of you are saying, there's a lot of really, really good EQs. And you saw us talking about the Sonox stuff, which was originally the Oxford EQs. Those are really, really good. Yeah, Niklaus is saying yes, I did see there's a Queen movie coming out, don't worry. So what about corrective EQ? Well, this is corrective EQ. That's what I'm talking about. When I use things like the REQ or the Sonox and stuff like that, I'm using those specifically for removing things. For me, there's nothing better for boosts and stuff than the classic API sound or the filter banks. They tend to be EQs that I reach for. The API ones, the Waves API, because I know the frequencies to boost, and the filter bank because I want to do global kind of warming and brightening and stuff like that, and knowing that it's going to impart the kind of sound that I want without sounding harsh. But then the detailed ones, like people are pointing out, things like the Sonox, and of course the REQs, they're the EQs I reach for. And if you watch my videos, you'll see me like pulling out frequencies, doing huge cuts, because they seem to remove large areas or finite areas without affecting that much of a footprint on it. They don't seem to like add that much coloration. So you get what I'm saying. Analog emulations, they're what I reach for to boost. And you'll find that correlation. Not everybody's expressing it. I'm sure they will now after watching this video, but that's what most guys are doing. If you watch the video courses with Mark Needham, with Richard Furch, the one we're in 2 seconds away from doing a giveaway, if you watch these guys using a lot, they tend to go for the analog emulations when boosting. And then they tend to go for the very, very clean EQs when cutting, because they're creating a sound using analog or virtual emulations, whatever you want to call them, simulations. They go for those to create the sonic sound, the landscape, make it feel, and then they correct it with things that are more surgical, and B, don't impart that much of a sound. Does that all make sense? That will probably help a lot of discussion, because I see a lot of EQ discussion. I see a lot of videos where they're talking about it, but they don't get into those details. They're probably not at that level. They're still learning how to teach as it is, and still learning how to make music themselves. But you're going to see why you've got these guys like Richard Furch and Mark Needham and all these guys that we admire, why you see them doing such global things with these virtual plugins. But when you see them doing detailed things, they're doing with tools that are much more surgical and have less of a sonic footprint. Okay, let's do our first giveaway. Our first giveaway for the Richard Furch course, which I highly recommend, 4 hours of incredible teaching. What's your favorite EQ plugin? What is the one that you use more than anything else? What is the one? What is the one that you reach for every single time? Tell me what your favorite plugin. I'd love to see the discussion on that. And I'm going to ask Andrew very nicely if he could pour me a cup of that lovely looking coffee over there. I've already had 2 cups of tea, but I need a cup of coffee to add the extra caffeine to keep me awake here. I'm just joking. I'm very awake. So what is your favorite EQ? I see Fab Filter. I see REQs. I see the API 560. UAD, that's a compressor, 1176, but we'll get to compressors in a minute. REQ2. Paul Bright, it's, well, you can't win, and oh, you do Fab Filter EQ. You have to say what you use. Fab Filter, Isotope, Waves, Fab Filter, Digi EQ, Logitech Fab Filter, Slate's SSL emulation. Yeah, we will get into the SSL stuff. As you know, I have an SSL. The reason why I'm not touching on it is I'm just talking specifically about EQs, compressors, you know, delays, reverbs. We're going to focus on dedicated ones at the moment. We can talk about omni-channels, we can talk about all of the other stuff, but at the moment, let's just talk about dedicated plugins. Air EQ, stock EQ for, on your DAW, that's great, highly. UAD Harrison, yes, that's great. Slick EQ, Fab Filter, Ozone, SSL channel, UAD Pultex, Ableton, Sheps. I like Pultex. It's interesting. Do you remember I did a shootout a long time ago between the Pultex emulations and real Pultex, because I have 6 of them, and I let you guys listen. And for whatever reason, my Pultex, the real ones, just sounded phenomenal, and the plugins sounded good, but they just didn't seem to sound as good. I don't know why. I think that I think mine are completely and utterly tip-top condition. I do know the ones that I do know one of the companies that sampled them. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Say hello to Andrew, everybody. Andrew and his mustache. Look at that.
How's it going?
Look at that mustache. Woo! That deserves a round of applause. What was I saying? I do know that one of the places that did an emulation, I know where they did it, and I know the one they used, and I don't like the sound of that one. You know, we can pick you, but you have to choose, you have to give us a reason to pick you. You can't just go pick me, pick me. You have to tell us what is your favorite EQ. I see a lot of Fab Filters. I see a lot of Waves. I think Fab Filters are getting very, very popular because of people being able to look. Will Buchanan is the winner. You've won a mixing pop with Richard Furch. Please email support at Produce Like a Pro. Congratulations, Will Buchanan. Yeah, I like the Puig Tech, but that was the one we actually shot out, believe it or not. Congratulations, Will Buchanan. Okay, so yeah, so one of the emulations, I know the unit they emulated, and it's not one of my favorite sounding. It's not one of my favorite sounding Pultex. So it's a little bit, and I was in the studio and they were like, yeah, we don't think it's the best sounding one. I think that is one of the issues. When you're taking vintage equipment and emulating it, and you're sending all kinds of information through it and analyzing it, it's got to be a really amazing sounding unit. Sometimes if it's like named after a person, we won't say who, it might be they used it on a certain piece of gear, but it might not be something that, you know, that every engineer came in and loved and was their favorite one. It might be one person's favorite one for one job that they used to do it on. And I do know the emulation was based on a mixer who never leant over and changed that gear. He just had it set up for one job only. So I don't know if I would have emulated that one particular one. So that's the thing with doing vintage emulations. I almost feel like I have 6 Pultex. I feel like if we were to do an emulation of it, we should take every single one of those Pultex and run every single one and find the commonality between all to get the definitive Pultex. Okay, I'd love to do plugins. That's definitely a discussion to talk about. Yes, we could emulate my Pultex, yes. Okay, let us move on. So we've had a good discussion about EQs. Thank you ever so much. I think there's much more to cover, and we will. We'll do more of a discussion, you guessed it, on Thursday. All right, so I think the natural place to move from EQs is, you guessed it, compressors. Now, I've noticed that people are catching on. There's been a bit of a discussion, been catching on the stuff we've been talking about for a long time in our videos about using multiple compressors. For a lot of time, I'd watch people doing videos, you know, mixing videos on YouTube, and they would have a compressor and an EQ. And then when I first started doing my mix breakdown videos about 3 years ago, if you want to go to the playlist, which I think Matt, you should put the mix breakdown playlists up, please. There's a playlist called Mix Breakdowns. If you go to our mix breakdown playlist, you'll see that ever since the beginning, I've been using multiple EQs and multiple compressors and de-essers, particularly on my vocal chain. And I used to come under a lot of flack from other YouTubers and other people saying, that's really stupid, don't use a lot of compressors and different EQs. And now, of course, the same people now are producing videos where they're showing using multiple compressors and EQs. Why is that? Well, compressors don't sound good when asked to do a lot of work. And coming up making records in the late 80s and all the way through the 90s, it was always a secret, open secret among all of us that were producers and engineers, is that you use multiple instances of compression and EQ. Why do you do that? Well, firstly, like I said, talking about compressors specifically, is taking one compressor and making it do 3 or 4 dB worth of gain reduction is tasty and musical. But doing 20 dB on one, 20 dB on another will choke the living schnizzle out of your signal. So basically, and please check out all the mix breakdown videos, because you'll see I've been doing this for a long, long time, because that's how, you know, real professionals mix. And I'm glad to see that these other people are playing catch up and now talking about it. I think that there's a sort of mentality from analog that still applies in digital, especially because a lot of compressors that we like are analog emulations. So I think compression, I believe, there's the mix breakdown playlist. Please check them all out. Make a note of that playlist, and then you can watch. And some of those have files you can download. Some of those ones we gave away the multi-tracks as well. If you're not already an Academy member, of course you can join, and there's about 30 multi-tracks in there with all the mix breakdown stuff as well. And we got like 2 years worth of things in there. So yeah. And as Marshall is saying, using multiple compressors avoids that pumping effect. So compressors fall into 2 very distinct categories, and you know what they are. They're exactly the same idea as the EQs. Now, you've got the analog emulation ones, and I use them, I don't use them as much as I use modern compressors. Strangely enough, I don't use emulations as much as I actually think the one thing that's huge and has really, really improved mixing beyond anything else is digital compression. We could have a fight about this, and I could be told I'm wrong by all the experts, but honestly, the RVox, the Waves Renaissance Vox, the RVox is one of my favorite go-to compressors. Now, it's stodgy, it's a little dark, it adds some low mids to it. However, I put it first on the vocal. I noticed that Michael Brower does the same thing when he was mixing the Frey record, when he was mixing the Mandy Perkins record that I did, when he was mixing the Josiah Lemming record I did. For 3 albums in a row, 3 major label records in a row. That was Epic, Sony, and Warner Brothers. I did 3 big records in a row that Michael mixed. And every single time he had the RVox on first on the vocal. It grabs the vocal, it seems to maintain some grit to the vocal, and it seems to really catch the low end. Now, obviously, that's not the only thing you're going to do, but the RVox is a go-to plugin for mine. A, because I love Michael's vocal sound, but B, it was already something I was doing, but it was gratifying to see Michael do it. It gives me a big, fat, evenly compressed vocal immediately. So why is that an advantage? Well, that's an advantage because before I apply any EQ or anything else to it, I've now got a big vocal to work with. A lot of the time, and this is not how I grew up, a lot of the time people are EQing vocals heavily on recording. All of the guys that I grew up listening to, Don Smith, an amazing engineer, Jack Douglas, incredible producer, and of course Dave Jordan. Those guys, amazing producer and engineer and mixer, those guys all made records I loved the sound of, and all of them record vocals with EQ off. They may record with some high pass filtering on. They probably do that on the mic end. If they're in a situation where there's a bit of low rumble going on and the singer's like shaking the mic stand, whatever it might be, they may high pass. But otherwise, none of those guys EQ the vocal when recording it. That's a good thing to know. So I find I use the RVox, which I'm sure Matt will put a link to. I use the RVox because I like that it brings in all the frequencies. Now, not everybody likes it. I know a couple of professionals that don't like it, but I know a lot of professionals that do like it. It's a good secret weapon to put on your vocal first in your chain because it brings up the low end, it brings up the grit, it brings everything forward. For some people, it's a little stodgy because it brings up a lot of the in the vocal. However, for me, that's good. I want everything to be up front. So if I want to start carving a little bit and I want to shape the vocal more, it's there. You'll see that I do a lot of high-end boost in vocals. So when I do apply EQ, I'll boost the EQ with running de-essing as well. It's a trick that I've been talking about now for 3 years since I've been on YouTube. I haven't seen a lot of people do videos about it, but I'm sure they will start to. But it's a really amazing trick to make your vocals sound super, super bright and airy. What I'll do is I'll put a de-esser on first, then put an EQ afterwards. So I already de-essing it, then I'll brighten the vocal and immediately put another de-esser on after it. What is a de-esser? Well, a de-esser is a multiband compressor, isn't it? It literally just sits there and finds the frequencies. So it allows you to just compress excessive high-end things. Anyway, so RVox first in a chain for me. It's a brand new compressor. It's not an emulation of anything. It's just a compressor. I really, really like it. Now, don't get me wrong. I also like the Mac DSP compressors. Really, really good. I have a tendency to use those on drums a lot. I use them on drums a lot because I find that the attack and release times, I can get really aggressive compression on them and I can get very detailed on my attack and release times. They're really good on loops. They're really, really good on room mics because I can shake the. I can make my compressor super fast, and I can get the attack and release times really, really super fast. So I can make my room mics drier sounding or roomier sounding. I really love what I can do with Mac DSP's compressors. I then find in my vocal chain, I am often using the R comp, the Renaissance compressor. I use that a lot on my mix. The reason why I use that is because it's pretty darn invisible. Once I start getting into the world, and I think that you should look for those kind of compressors. Once you start getting into the world of EQing your vocal, and you've already applied some EQ, you might find that you don't want to use as colored a compressor sound. So I go for the Renaissance compressor. I know a lot of people are talking about the Sonox. I see the MV2, or you wrote the M2V, but I'm sure you mean the MV2 come up. That is a really, really nice compressor. I'll talk about that in a minute. That's one of my favorite plugins ever. I love that compressor, but we'll talk about that in a different instance. At the moment, I'm just focusing on the vocals. So I think, again, two very independent things that I do with compressors. I like compressors that add a coloration. The problem with some of the older emulations is that when you hit them really, really hard, they tend to choke very easily. When you have compressors, older compressors, we used to use a lot of these older compressors, but a lot of them don't have a variable attack and release. So without that variable attack and release, like LA2As, where's my LA2A? I don't know where it is. Somewhere around. Well, my Ampex up there has an LA2A built into it. With LA2As, they don't have a variable attack and release, so you have to be careful. If you're going to use an emulation like that, you're using it for the sonics. You cannot slam it. If you slam it, It's fine on a tambourine when you want that big fat tambourine with no attack, but horrible on a vocal when you want to preserve, you know, that. You have to use modern compressors. So be careful when you're using older emulations like the LA2s and LA2As and stuff like that, is they don't have a variable attack and release. This was something we were talking about and came up in discussion with Richard Furch's video yesterday, which I highly recommend you go to, because he talks about using the Browerizer technique of using multiple compressors coming up on faders and then blending them. And somebody asked, well, shouldn't you varying your attack and release to the song? And he answered, sure. However, a lot of these compressors don't have a variable attack and releases. So trying to make them fit in time with the song isn't going to work. So this is important. So when you're using the older emulations, just don't be aggressive on them. You can be a little bit more aggressive with the modern ones because they have variable attack and releases, and you can make sure you're not completely destroying your vocal. I find I do like the omni-channel. I'll talk about that all day. However, we're just talking specifically, and a lot of people are talking about it. Yes, but we're talking specifically about individual plugins. We can do another discussion on the multi ones, and we can even talk about that maybe later if we have time. Okay, so with compression specifically, we have to be careful when using some of the older school emulations that you're using them for sonic characteristics. Like 1176s are amazing and they have a variable attack and release. For the older style compressor, definitely the most usable old style compressor on the market. Whether you're in a studio with hardware or whether you're using software, you're reaching for an 1176 is a good idea. I saw Tony Maserati was using in a bomb factory and people were bemused. Well, you know what? It's because it's a really, really good compressor and people love it. Here's Christian Vane. We're on the live on the YouTube, Christian. Hey, do you have the packets for the sonotones? Did you throw everyone out, or is there any left?
I threw them out.
But do we use all?
No, we saw some.
Oh, will you grab some? Because I was talking about the strings. I wanted to show them. Thank you. So anyway, so yes, the 1176 is the most versatile vintage style compressor. Fairchilds sound amazing. LA2s sound amazing. However, all of them have very fixed attack and release. You can change it, but you can't get the super fast. Not unless, of course, you buy an Unfairchild. If you have the money to buy an Unfairchild, you have incredible variations of attack and release. It's something that Eric Valentine was very aware of, is like, yes, take these incredible sounding units, but then make them usable by modern standards. Can you shut the outside door, please? Make them usable by modern standards. All right, Christian is handing me. These are the strings we were talking about. These are the classics. There you go. Very happy. I was playing the acoustic this morning, and these are what we have on the. These are the vintage. These are the ones that Jeff Becker is using. So yeah. Oh, and they do a fusion pack, which I don't actually know what's different about that. I wonder if is it like a ground wound maybe? I wonder what.
I'm not sure actually.
I would imagine it would be more slinky, a little bit more ground wound.
Custom alloy, and then I think those are both still fusion.
Oh, these are Fusion 9-42s. So this is the company. I love how they sound on that acoustic.
Yeah, they sound really good.
They sound really good.
That's right.
Yeah.
It sounds massive.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy. And very even.
Yep.
The low end isn't like super, super boomy like the other strings, were just the whole guitar was all like kind of too boomy. And I knew restringing it was going to help, but that's phenomenal. Yeah, really happy. Anyway, so that's the company, by the way. All right, so back to the compressors. So basically, an 1176 in a hardware situation was always the go-to before, of course, distressors. So let us, oh, and the Clang Elm. Oh, yes. Now, in the world of the emulations, I do like the Hybrid H-Comp. It's really, really good. Let's not forget the Clang Helm. Thank you very much for bringing it. Thank you, Cyclops. Yeah, the Clang Helm, as you know, the MJUC is a favorite of mine. It's a favorite of mine because it's a good sounding compressor, but because the saturation that it brings is the most musical saturation I've heard. I think Klanghelm, which in German, for those of you that aren't German, literally means sound helmet, which I think is awesome. Sound helmet, like sound hat, you know. And for a guy with bad hair like myself, I like the sound helmet. But last but no means least, let's talk about the MV2. I don't use the MV2 at the beginning of anything. I find it too aggressive. But at the end of a signal chain, it is unfreaking believable. I think the MV2, along with a plugin I'm about to talk about, is my favorite plugin. On bass guitars, it is freaking unbelievable. Yeah, the SSL collection is fantastic. I love everything SSL. I have a real SSL. I've tried all the different emulations and stuff. I do love the SSL stuff. However, I'm just focusing on the individual plugins, but I do think that the sound of like the Waves and the UAD is fantastic. The Duende, I love how that sounds. Yeah, Soundhelmet does sound like a band name. But the MV2 on the end of a bass guitar chain is life-changing. Because we always have people talking about, I think it's the ultimate last thing to put on a bass guitar. People are talking about, when I go up high, the note drops out. When I go down low, it's too boomy. Well, put the MV2 on the end of your bass chain. And I used to have to put L1s or L2s or anything like that, but the MV2 came out a few years ago. I stuck it on the end of my bass chain and take care of my hair, yeah, sure. I put it on the end of my bass chain and it was a massive game changer. All right. Let's do it. Giveaway number 2. What is your favorite compressor? What is your favorite compressor? Let us know. What is your favorite compressor? And if you wanted to give me like one line why it's your favorite, that would be really... Yes, I have tried Max Volume. I love it. And I do love the 2500. I think that is fantastic as well. And I love the Mac DSP stuff. Like I say, Mac DSP compressors on drums and drum loops in particular is great. No, the MJUC is a fantastic compressor, and it is not CPU hog at all. I usually have about 10 or 12 instances of it. G-Comp is great. Track Comp. Ableton Glue by Softtube. Yeah, Softtube are really, really good. MJUC, SSL, LA2A, FG Stress. Yes. See, distressors are the ultimate modern hardware compressor. If you're buying a hardware compression, can't go back. The Slates, the 1176, Warms 1176, 2254 on drums, hardware 1176s, Pro C2 Fab Filter, Logic built-in, R-Comp for rap vocals, yep, it's wonderful. CLAs, oh, I love the CLA 1176, gets used a lot. I know the story that Waves emulated some of the best 1176s and CLA. Softtube, yeah. But I have no problem with the stock Bomb Factory 1176 that comes with Pro Tools. It gets used a lot. Klanghelm, yeah, the Klanghelm is great for the saturation. But believe me, the MV2 at the end of your chain is life-changingly good. UAD 2500s, R-Comp, T-Rex British. Oh yeah, let's not forget the T-Rex stuff. You see, the problem is like we're not talking about all-in-one. If we're talking about all-in-ones, the omni-channel gets talked about a lot, but do not underestimate the T-Rex. The T-Rex is something that I use a lot. And sonically, and we were talking about this the other day, was sonically streets ahead when it came out like 18 plus years ago, whenever it was. It was unbelievably good sounding. MV2, Focusrite Red. I never dug the Focusrite plugins that came free with Pro Tools. I don't know if I'm alone on that. I know a few people going to them. I don't know what it was. They just never worked for me. It was one. I think it was when Mac DSP came out. It was a big deal for me because I only had the Focusrite Red with my free stuff that came with Pro Tools. Thank you. Paul Smith says MV2 was life-changing ever since I found it through you. It's pretty life-changing. I mean, yeah, T-Rex, fantastic stuff. Waves SSL E-channel. T-Rex, Volf compressor, LA2s, Fab filter, Pro C2, C4 multiband. Yeah, we haven't gone into multibands yet, but ELOP, LEM 76, T-Rex, yeah, T-Rex and stuff. I use a lot. The T-Rex, I kind of use it all. I kind of use it all. I do use it all. PSP stuff, Vertigo. Yeah, the Vertigo made great stuff. Fell filter. UA 1176, DBX 160. Well, if it kills the MV2, why is it no longer available? Yes, the MV2, can you post a link, please, Matt? We're being asked to post. Yeah, I mean, the MV2 is just the ultimate to stick on the end of your bass guitar. Once you put it on the end of the bass guitar, you've done all your EQ and all your compression, you'll just be so happy. You just will. I mean, if it's the only thing you buy it for, I think it's usually like 29 bucks or something. Yeah, I like the oak sound stuff. Yeah, C4 and bass. I mean, I do all those things too. I use multiband. I use lots of different compressors. I use EQs. I put the MV2 on. You know, I just put the MV2 in the end. Yeah, linear phase is great. Shadow Hills is great for mastering. The Bass Rider is fantastic. You know, I'd still put the MV2 at the end. So Matt, can you put the link to the MV2 again, please? Somebody just bought the MV2. Fantastic. We'll put the link up. Wave C6, C4, 1176, G-Bus. Good old manual compressor. I mean, if you're asking me about hardware compressors, there's the Waves MV2 link for you, and Matt will probably put it up. It should be under the video as well. Fostex R8 in clipping mode, very nice. If we're talking about hardware compressors, the best hardware compressor on the market, bar none, is 100% definitely the Distressor. It does every single job that you want it to do. When you've grown up using 160s, 1176, LA2As, LA3As and stuff, you can take a Distressor and make it do everything that you want it to do. It is the best hardware compressor on the market, bar none. It's the reason why whenever I go to a studio, no matter who it is, they have Distressors. Now, I don't have a Distressor. They've never given me one. I've never bought one. And it's basically because I have every single thing that it does. I have a Spectrasonics, which I love. I have 1176s, 160s, 165s. I have, of course, the Tegelar, which is amazing. I have SSLs. I have everything. And it's interesting, LA2As. It's interesting, but if I was to start again, I would buy a Distressor. Yeah, it's just... it's interesting, Gautier's saying he doesn't like them when mixing Distressors. It's interesting because most of the guys I know that use them mainly on mixing. Oh, the Omnipressor is amazing. Eventide Omnipressor. DBX 116 to 1176 for vocals. That's my favorite. That's my go-to. Alesis is great. Verticos are amazing. All right, Matt, did you choose a winner? Did you choose a winner? Did I miss the winner? Winner, winner, chicken dinner? Did I miss it? Have you chosen the winner? Then we can move on. Fairchild, oh yes. I like the Fairchild emulations. He chose you, Justin. Who did you choose? Matt, did you choose anybody? Can somebody text Mac and see? There he is. Hey! Media Man Houston, sorry. You've won Mixing with Pop with Richard Furch. There you go. Media Man Houston. Hey! All right, he's posted it 3 times. We woke him up and then he posted it 3 times. Yeah, no, it's an amazing combo. That's my combination. The 116 to 1176 is my combination for vocal tracking. I stole that from Dave Jordan, and then I found out with working with Mike Klink, that's what he used as well. That's what Mike Klink used on all of the, you know, Use Your Illusion, all of the Guns N' Roses records. So, yeah, the T-Rex Classic Comp. We could talk about T-Rex as well for a long time. They make everything that we love in this kind of area as well. All right, so we've done EQs, we've done compressors. One thing we didn't talk about with compressors quickly is you know, the R comp is the Renaissance comp. The R comp is a big fan of mine, and I use that. Tend to use that for the same reason I use the Renaissance EQs and the Oxford, the Sonox and all that stuff, is I use those, and probably why a lot of you use the Fab filter. I think that Fab filter, Renaissance, and the Oxford are three very interchangeable plugins. The reason for them is they all do EQing without really massively coloring the sound. So whether you're using a Renaissance compressor, or you're using the Fab filter stuff, or you're using the Oxford stuff, they tend to be, there without coloring the sound as much. They're the ones I reach for maybe at the end to control things, and I tend to take a sound, especially when I'm giving other people's stuff to mix. I'll take something that might be kind of lifeless, you know, and add coloration to it early on. Hello, greetings in Germany. Hello in Germany. And then I'll add the coloration afterwards. You know what I mean? It's like, it's something that I will do. Sorry, I just said that completely and utterly wrong. I'll take their sounds and I'll color them and add characteristics, you know, like boosting EQs, etc., using, you know, the filter banks, and you know, and compressing using maybe like the Arvox, because it adds quite a lot of heft to it. I'll do those kind of things first. Fairchilds, maybe, you know, things that add some coloration, and then, you know, just to get some sonic characteristics, and then I'll get into the detail work. However, at the very end, this might sound contradictory, I might add a Fairchild once I've got a sound that's fairly unaggressive, that doesn't have massive dynamic pitch. I might add that 670 emulation at the very end, because I'm not sending these huge peaks, and I don't want my Fairchild doing like squash 20 dB, and I just might use it for the sonics. It's very characteristic on mixing. You'll find guys, you know, will have a stereo Fairchild on their mix bus, tapping it because they like the sound that it's adding, but they don't want to hear it choke the mix. So it's kind of a catch-22. You might want to add coloration from EQ early on, but with coloration from compression you might add later once it's more tamed, because you don't want to take a Fairchild and do this with it. You don't, because it will just go and you'll get a singer going on and it'll go and it will just completely destroy it. So you'll probably want to use multiple instances of compression that have less, you know, a less ability to choke, let it remain freer sounding, more natural sounding. Anyway, so, but these are things that have to work for you, but that's what works for me. You know, I don't want to take an old school emulation and destroy it and like hit it far too hard, unless it's, you know, unless it's something that deserves that, unless it's something that adds that, which could be mic pre emulations and certain EQs, you know, we'll do that. All right, so thank you, Tisbonis. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Okay, so let's get into, because it's being asked a lot, multiband and dynamic EQs. Multiband and dynamic EQs. Now, multiband compressors are wonderful. I find them, I use them a lot on two things in particular. Number one, bass guitars. I'll take about 250 hertz and below and just kind of address it so it's more even. I don't have to go crazy. Sometimes I'll give a lot of gain reduction. Sometimes I'm just doing 1 or 2 dBs worth of gain reduction. But I will use it, and I'm going to throw in a completely alien plugin into this conversation just because we are talking about my favorite plugins. And you know, this is a discussion on my personal favorite plugins. So I'll use a C4 or a C6. C4 in particular I use a lot for bass guitars. I'll also use it for correctional things, i.e. really aggressive electric guitars. However, these DS's, like the bog standard one stock one that comes in your DAW can also be used for really aggressive EQs. If you've got electric guitars which are ripping your head off and are so unbelievably bright, or acoustic guitars that are doing that pew, pew, pew kind of thing, take your de-esser and go in there and find those horrific frequencies and use a de-esser. It's quick and easy to find it and get rid of it. Really, really quick, easy way, especially if you're trying to make an electric or an acoustic guitar overall brighter, but you're, you know, and you'll find you're brightening the overall vocal itself, or the overall guitar itself, but there's these frequencies that are just poking out. Now, I tend to reach for de-essers in that situation. Multibands tend to be a little bit more of a global situation where I'm trying to take big, huge chunks, hence bass guitars, hence low end or low mid on electrics that I'm trying to, on electrics, I'm not necessarily trying to tame them. Sometimes I'm trying to get it where it's not there. Often I've had people send me one guitar track, which is 3 or 4 microphones that they've bussed together. And the problem is that it might be on multiple speakers, they might be different mics, they might be different mic pre's, they might be in different situations. And yes, you guess what happens when they bust them together. The low end and the low mids just seem to be completely disappeared, because not annihilated and gone, but just kind of like honky and lifeless, because they're bussing guitars to one, and you guessed it, there's polarity / phase issues. So I'll take a multiband and put it on an electric guitar and squash the schnizzle out of the lows and low mids. So maybe I'll go 400 and below and squash it super aggressively. And then, you guessed it, I'll turn it up. So you'll see a lot of gain reduction going on, and then I'll turn it up. So now it's like, it's there, but it's more balanced. Because the problem is with that phasing issue, it might take individual things. That's what I love multibands for. That's what a C4 and a C6. C6 comes in more often than that, because there might be lots of different areas. Now, de-essers are very correctional on high mids and high frequencies that are ripping my head off on not just vocals, but on acoustic guitars and particularly electric guitars. I will use the stock ones as well as the waves as well as all the other ones. However, and it's come up a lot, dynamic EQs. Dynamic EQs for me are a last resort, but are absolutely amazing. I don't need them on the high end. I don't need them so much on the low mids, but they're amazing all the way around, like all of the mid area for horrible honkiness. Some singers, a lot of singers have this in their voice, which is in that 600 to 700 area, and is ugly. You know, if you've got a singer that sounds super nasally, if somebody sent you something to mix and they put the capsule here, that happens a lot. I've seen singing sessions. I saw a video the other day on how to record vocals, and the capsule was here. So you're going to get a lot of this when the guy or the girl's singing, you know. So what you want, hey D-Shred, you want to sing here, obviously. You want the capsule to be in front of their mouth. Not on their nose, because a great singer, actually, if they've gone to really, really good singing lessons, will be singing from all places at once. Ron Anderson, my favorite vocal coach, for those of you that have ever watched, he's got his Instagram is called Voice Tech Ron, I think. He's an incredible vocal coach, and he teaches some very traditional stuff and some very modern stuff. Teaches people to sing using their chest, using their diaphragm properly, using, you know, a head voice and a nasal voice evenly. He will teach people to sing very, very evenly. The thing with that is that you will get this, you'll get the resonance of the head and the chest and everything. And of course, it's not pushing any one area too much. I think that's the ultimate singing coach. Even I watched that guy who's called Singing Coach, and he's a younger guy, and he's always like sitting on his bed or something. It's kind of a fun channel, and he has good constructive criticism of some of the biggest singers in the world. And he did one where a singer, Selena Gomez, goes to another very famous vocal coach, and a lot of the stuff he said was very, very valid. It was very valid because it was only teaching one kind of response. What I like about Ron is Ron he's taken so many great singers I work with and teaches them to sing evenly throughout the whole range. Now, the problem with that is, of course, is that if you put the microphone in the wrong place on a well-trained singer, you're going to get only the nose. If they're a guy like me who's not a well-trained, not a very good singer, you know, I might be all nose, I might be all chest, I might be all who the heck knows. So anyway, the point is that you do that with the singer, you're going to get a lot of 600, 700. This is that area here. It's all like this. It's all just the nose. So, dynamic EQs. You know, we talked about the soothe. We talked about a lot of different people's EQs. If you watch the Eric Valentine video, he talks about the soothe exclusively. It's really good for those kind of frequencies. Really, really good. Yeah, there we go. People are saying the soothe is good for honk removal. I think for voice and violin, I think it is, you know, that's where dynamic EQ comes in. The thing about the honkiness in a vocal is it comes and goes. If you've, and another thing is also when it's recorded in small rooms and there's really bad standing waves, you get a lot of like mid-range kind of going backwards and forwards. I had a vocal once that had 450 hertz going absolutely nuts. And then sometimes it was a guy singer and he was singing for a U67. It was a German band. It was a great record I was mixing. And I spent about a day on and off trying to get the vocals to sound good. They ended up re-singing it. And I tried everything, multibands, dynamic EQs, because it was very excessive. When I looked, at a wave file, it was this. It was literally like full-blown areas missing and then frequencies by the side of it exaggerated. So it was like no 350 and tons of 400, no 450, tons of 500. I mean, the standing waves that were going on in that room were insane and it was totally hollow. So I sat there with a dynamic EQ and compressed like 350 and 450 and then boosted 400 and 5, you know what I mean? It was so much work and all it did was sound really artificial. So it was really kind of horrific. So honkiness for country and western, yeah, honky tonk. Yeah, honk is 500, 600, 700. And you know, other areas as well, but you're right, dynamic EQs and the soothe is really wonderful for that. So while we're on it, let's do our last giveaway. Last but no means least. Oh, and by the way, those of you embrace the honk, Billy Corgan, yes. My monitor's position, we're not talking monitors today, but they are centered and they are pointing so that the sweet spot is just here. I sit here, tweeters pointing at my ears. This position here sounds perfect. I also have two pairs of monitors here, of which they are iLouds and Mini Genelecs, which sit behind. Anyway, so the last one, yeah, comb filtering, yeah. I mean, we're talking standing waves, yeah. Standing waves is where you get in a room where it's symmetrical walls and stuff, and you get like duck, 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 and it just keeps going horrible. Yeah, exactly. 400 to 700 is where all the honk is. I find typically it's 650 on a lot of girl singers. Guys, it can be a little lower, but yeah, it's that sort of just above the low end, just before pure mid range. So, you know, typically I suppose it's anywhere from 7 to 1K. Anywhere from like 300 to about 1K. It usually lives around 650, 7, but you're right, it can be down to 4. It can be a little 800, but yeah, it's usually 4 to 7 is a good, I'll agree with that. But again, it's where the dynamic EQs come into great play. So, last but no means least, yeah, the acoustical audio, yeah, there's some good stuff. Do the hollow body guitars mess up the acoustics? Not in the seating position. I suppose if I was standing here, if I was standing over here when I was mixing, maybe. But no, they don't. Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, I've got a pair of Genelecs. It's a fairly big control room, as you can see. So sitting there, I don't get that issue. But I'm sure if I was standing with my head listening to a like tiny reverberation on the acoustics, that might be a problem, but not where I'm sitting there. That rug really ties the room together. Well, thank you very much, Brian. Yes, it does, doesn't it? It's actually from my house when we used to live in Silver Lake before we moved here. Okay, so last but no means least, this is so our last competition to win the Richard Furch, which I believe is one of the best courses we've ever done. It's a 4-hour mixing course, and he does so much freaking detail. It is unfreaking believable. So, tell me, what is your favorite dynamic EQ? What is your favorite dynamic EQ? And let us know, and Matt will pick a winner for the Richard Furch course. There's a bit of a delay, so I haven't seen anybody answer yet. That's not an IKEA. Oh, that one. Yeah, that is the IKEA coffee table. I had a different coffee table, which is absolutely huge and beautiful, made of solid wood from India. But that's in storage. The Nova, the F6. I mean, the C4 is technically a multiband, but we'll allow some multibands. I was thinking more of dynamics, but we'll allow multibands in there. A Sonox dynamic, yeah. Fab filters and TDR. See a lot of TDR Novas coming up. A lot of F6s. Lots more TDRs, more F6s. Which IK multimedia were we talking about, AJ? More Novas, more F6s. Oh, people like, oh, I see, because the Nova's free. Did I get another coffee? That was delicious.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to say, everybody to hear this, that Andrew, I remember this. You do. You're right from the get-go. As Andrew has always made the best coffee. Are you even a coffee drinker? Now, how do you always know how to make, you always put the right amount in there?
I guess. I don't know.
It says a guess. Who did we decide was the worst coffee maker? It was Izzy, wasn't it? Wasn't it Izzy that... No, we had somebody once that could not make coffee. Well, we had the Irish intern that lasted about... I think he lasted 6 days in 2 weeks. And on the second week, he didn't come in. He only came in for 3 days, and then he said, well, he worked 36 hours, and he was like, that's nearly a 40-hour work week. Why do I have to come in anymore? You believe that? Where's Christian? You hear that one for interning?
Yeah, that's gonna be me.
Yeah, it's going to be you, is it? He literally wrote to me and said that he had worked. He said nearly 40 hours, and it was like 30. First of all, it wasn't even 36 hours, but even if it had been, and a lot of it was like kind of sitting around, and it was just like I was just like wow. And at that point, we'd all like worked 15-hour days, started before him and finished after him. But there you go. Just a little life lesson on interning. We should do. How often do Waves have a sale? They've got a sale going on at the moment. They've got a sale going on at the moment. So what I would suggest we do is. Oh, you saw the interview this morning, Gacio? Yeah. So when you guys hang up, go and watch the Richard Furch interview. It's really, really good. Hey, would you guys hit up the Matthews? Because they called me 1 minute ago, and I'm on the call. But isn't Eric supposed to be picking them up?
He is there.
Oh, he's there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they're coming to pick me up, so
Okay, yeah.
they should be here any minute. Well, they do have sales. They just, you know, in their defense, they have so many products. Can you put up a sales link to the MV2? Is that on sale? Yeah, watch the Richard Furch interview. So thank you. Looks like oh, gotcha! You won. Nicely done. That's nice. I see. Isn't that wonderful? I see. Like, it's always great when people who are always positive comments and have been around for years supporting us. That's so amazing. Congratulations. Congratulations. I love that. I love that. And it's, you know, it is heartwarming. I have to be honest, it's incredible to see these same names on. Can you pick this up? Tell them I'm on live and I'll call them back unless there's something that specifically they need.
Okay, Max.
So yes, the MV2. So Matt, sorry all going on here because we have to go in a minute. Can we put the MV2? I'll be off in a minute. The MV2 is on sale, is it not, Matt? Can you put it on the waves thing? There you go. He's put it up there. Thank you, everybody. Has Eric had a new haircut? Well, he's not actually here. He went to pick up the Matthews because, you know, we're making their album and we're taking them over to Bob Marlette's. So that's where he is at the moment. So if you haven't already, would you please like and share? I'd really appreciate it if you liked and shared. That would be absolutely amazing. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We do 2 of these a week. We do tons of giveaways. We do reviews. We do interviews. We do tons of free multi-tracks. So if you sign up for producelikeapro.com, you'll get tons of free multi-tracks. Okay. This has been absolutely amazing. The only plugin I didn't talk about, that I really wanted to talk about, of my favorite plugins is the R-Bass. I love the R-Bass. I use it on bass guitar all the time. Its default setting of 80 Hertz is freaking awesome. Also, if you've ever watched any Andrew Shep's videos, and he's got lots and lots of tuition videos and different plugin manufacturers and companies that he works with, so I'm sure you've seen his stuff. He's got tons of stuff out there. He uses the R-Bass on kick drums. And I haven't done that in a while, but it's really, really good on kick drums. I usually go live at 11 a.m. and I usually do that. Hey, Lee, no, go and watch the Richard Furch video. That is where I want people to go. Go watch that Richard Furch video because it's really, really cool video. And check out his course, which I'm assuming Matt is going to put up and is going to put underneath, you know. But the R-Bass, I also use it on toms. I use it on the low end on toms. It's absolutely phenomenal. So please, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Check out the Richard Furch interview and check out the Richard Furch course. It was really amazing. Thank you ever so much, Ronnie. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Cyclops. Thank you, Electric Outworks, Martin, or you Martine and Larson. Yeah, the R-Bass on toms is amazing. Yeah, stock plugins can be great as well. Thank you, Eelpoy. Thank you, David. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Media Man Houston. I don't know, Media Man, what the MV2 does or doesn't do. The reality is it sounds amazing. I don't really get into those debates of like what things look like. Thank you, Pete. Glad you're enjoying the Academy. If you haven't already joined the Academy, be sure to join. Thank you, Drake. Thank you, Sir Egbert. John. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Crons. Oh, I like the editing part. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, William. Thank you, Brett, Mark, Obsidian, Eric, Yanis, Diego, Paul, Soren, Joseph, Mr. Man on Fire, One Man on Fire, Bill, oh, sorry, Dill, Lemica, Logan, Brett, Ilpoy, Hamish, David, everybody. Thank you ever so much. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Thank you, everybody. Brad, everybody, Brian, you name it. You all rock. Somebody's Lion's Hearts Productions asked me a question I can't refuse. When you think about it, isn't a dynamic EQ superior to a multiband compressor in every way? 2 crossover filters, more phasing than phasing from an EQ cut. I wouldn't say it is superior to a multiband compressor, just because a multiband compressor serves a very wonderful, easy, you know, very broad kind of sculpted stuff. So it's absolutely wonderful. But is it superior to an EQ when you have too much excessive EQ that is happening only sometimes? Yes, I agree. If you're in a situation where an EQ, you're going in because there's a honkiness and you're trying to pull out that 650, if it's only there even 75% of the time, pulling it out on the vocal on the soft part might ruin the vocal. So I agree, dynamic EQ to remove ugly frequencies is much better than just going in there and trying to remove those ugly frequencies, unless it's like a fat synthesizer. EQ, I agree, because if you've got like a big fat synth that is killing the snare drum, it's killing the doing, doing, the ring on a snare drum. Maybe it's like 1K or 1.5, you know, sometimes 650 is ugly on a snare, sometimes it's beautiful. It might be that ring, who knows? And maybe that fat synthesizer is going and destroying your snare drum. Using an EQ to pull it out of the big fat synth, not a problem, because it's a big fat synth that's playing it evenly. It's a blob of sound, great. If you've got an incredibly well EQ'd and compressed bass guitar, and there's a honky frequency in it, you can pull it out on the EQ and it's gone forever. However, I agree, dynamic EQs are there for the situations where you have a frequency in a vocal which is peaking from time to time. So that's where a dynamic EQ is there, because you might not want to pull it out on softer vocals. So I do agree, that's a good question, and I don't think it's instead of a multi-band Lions Heart Productions, because I think a multiband still has a place, but I definitely think a dynamic, when it comes to correctional issues that are occurring maybe most of the time, but not all of the time, dynamic EQ is the way to go. And of course, it is going to be maybe a honky frequency which is exaggerated, so it's peaking like this, coming up and down. So you can set your dynamic EQ to just catch it and keep it even. So great question. All right, everybody, please like and share. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and I'll see you all again very soon.